time for the Severe MMA preview show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
It's been quite the journey that Jonathan Dwight Jones has brought us on throughout his career, and the next chapter happens on Saturday night. And it's a brand new chapter. It's up to the heavyweight division. At 23 years of age, he became the youngest UFC champion in the light heavyweight division, went through everybody and anybody in that, which was the most and the best division in all of mixed martial arts at the time. On Saturday night, he faces a new challenge, and that challenge is against Cyril Gane in the heavyweight division. And there is lots and lots to discuss about this fight. I cannot wait for this. I've been talking to myself all day, trying not to get too excited while recording this preview show. I just have to get something out there. I have to share my thoughts, first of all, and some of the questions that I have coming into this main event. Obviously, Valentina Shevchenko returns against Alexa Grasso in the co-main event for the flyweight title. We have other fights that we're going to talk about, but buckle up. We're here. We're going to be here for a little while because we're going to talk Jon Jones and Cyril Gane first. For me, there's lots of questions coming in here from both sides, and I think the biggest ones and probably the outcome of this fight is going to surround the questions that we're asking Jon Jones here. After seeing his run up through the light heavyweight division, he's beat the who's who, like I said already. We've had a little bit of dip in form. He's been coming close to defeat. People are getting closer to him. My thoughts were confirmed by him, and obviously you have to take everything with a pinch of salt. I felt it was a lack of motivation. I felt it was harder for him to get prepared for the likes, with all due respect, of Anthony Smith, Santos, and Reyes, when you've been taking out the likes of Shogun Rua, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Rampage Jackson, Alexander Gustafsson, who else? Daniel Cormier, all of those guys. I mean, it's the who's who. For him to come up here, I think there is a new motivation. There is a new meaning, and there's a new purpose for Jon Jones. And I believe that that purpose is greatness. And sorry, I just read your, you completely threw me off there, Harry. Donald Cormier. There's a new purpose for Jon Jones, and that is greatness. And greatness would be to become only the third ever person to move from light heavyweight to heavyweight and win the title. Not too many people have done it. DC was the second person to do it. He did it after Randy Couture did it back in the day. Jon Jones has his chance. Cyril Gane is his opponent here. One of the most elusive, diversive, athletic heavyweights that we've ever seen inside the UFC and in all of mixed martial arts. He'll have plenty of questions to ask Jon Jones. But I beg to differ. I wonder, are we getting too hyped up about Cyril Gane? I feel that we are. I actually would personally say that Cyril Gane is a little bit overhyped. I think he has a good set of skills for what he's capable of, but there's many holes in his games, and some of those holes were kind of taken advantage of against Francis Ngannou in the wrestling department. And I feel that Jon Jones can take more advantage of that as well. I feel there's been some chinks in his armor with his team as well. Francis Ngannou's first test against Stipe Miocic was a massive fail. I think that Fernand Lopez and his team failed to kind of game plan correctly against the grappling of Francis Ngannou. And we've seen him kind of fumble the bag, as the kids say these days, with Imamov in recent fights as well. Big question marks over the game planning in Cyril Gane's corner for me. And when you're coming in against a guy like Jon Jones, who brings that high level fight IQ, I do feel that it can be a big problem that Jon Jones can counter in the main event. And I'm going to go to Sean Sheehan first. I feel like I'm on an island. I'm definitely on an island with the preview show. I think I've not seen, I think all of your official picks are Cyril Gane in this fight. I've gone with Jon Jones. I got a little bit excited a couple of weeks ago, and I convinced myself, and I'm not completely throwing this prediction out of the way, but I do think Jon Jones can get a finish in this fight. It won't be on the feet. It will be by way of submission, I would feel, or maybe a dominating Cyril Gane on the ground. What makes you so confident, Sean, that Cyril Gane, obviously you're a big fan of Ciryl, and rightly so. He's a very skilled guy, but I do think there are flaws. I do think we have to look at some of his wins, and we really need to kind of look at him with a fine-tooth comb. Okay, you know, you go in there, you beat Derek Lewis. That's all right. It's a good win, but it's Derek Lewis. You beat Tai Tuivasa, who hurts you in his last fight. It's a huge step up in quality here. He's failed his one major test, and that was against Francis Ngannou. What makes you feel that it's going to be different this time for Cyril Gane, Sean?
First of all, you can do that with anyone, right? You can say, look at Jon Jones. He spent his whole career beating up middleweights and old men. Any of the people he fought in their primes, he almost lost or did lose to them. And, you know, maybe the judges gave it to Gustafsson. Almost lost that fight, could have lost it. Dominic Reyes, who's absolutely stone fucking useless, we've come to realize, almost beat him. And Thiago Santos as well. The rest of the fights, middleweights and blown up old men, right? So we can say that about anyone. Now the problem is here, and that's just I feel like I need to protect my vice Cyril Gane there a little bit, but I love this fight as well. I'm similar to you. I absolutely love it. And, you know, I give my pick. I throw out my pick, Cyril Gane. Who cares, really? Like, I just want to see this fight. I don't care who wins. Either guy can go out there and win for me. I just want to see a high-level, brilliant fight here. But what really stands out to me here is two things, right? For Jon Jones, just seeing him around, I saw him there just before we started. He did this bit of a press conference. And he was like, oh, things have changed so much. You know, the UFC is so different. Things have gotten so much better around, you know, the fight week and all of this. And he just felt like a guy. And I've never actually even thought this before about this fight in the months we've been talking about it, or even the years we've been talking about Jon Jones coming back. He felt like a guy who's kind of coming back like GSP did. To have kind of maybe one last hurrah, or to have like one fight. If he wins it, maybe he'll have another fight. If he wins that, he'll have another fight, loses, and then we never kind of see him again. That felt like Jon Jones. Like we have it in our head. And you were saying there, Jon Jones started off as a 23-year-old. And I feel like we sometimes see Jon Jones as a 23-year-old still. But Jon Jones no longer is a 23-year-old. He's a 35-year-old. 35 years old. Jon Jones is older than me, and look at me, I can fucking barely walk up the stairs with my knees and my fucking shoulder and the whole lot. He's ridden hard and put away wet as well, you know? He's had lots of fights and lots of training camps, but he's had a lot of fucking cocaine too, and a lot of women, and a lot of fucking nights out, and all of that. That's not easy. And you're going in there against a guy who does nothing but train, who does nothing but sculpt that perfect body that he has and moves around and hits hard. And I've never heard anything else about him. I don't think he's fucking doing what Jon Jones is doing anyway. Like, Gane is the perfect athlete. John, you could not say that about Jon Jones. Is he a gifted athlete? Yes. But he's a flawed man and a flawed human being, and now an old one and a decrepit one, and one that's fallen apart, and one that hasn't stretched for 3 years. And he's coming in here and he's expecting to go up in weight and fight one of the best in the world and win. We'll see.
Indeed we will. Indeed we will, Spencer. I mean, what are the big talking points coming in here? You look at Sean is talking about Cyril Gane training, being a fighter. My kind of assessment on it, if I'm being honest, is that Cyril Gane was kind of born an athlete that turned into a fighter, and Jon Jones was born a fighter who turned into a kind of an all-time great, to be honest, you know. And I do agree that we're not going to see the same Jon Jones as we did 10 or 15 years ago.
Just 1 second before you go on that. Hasn't Jon Jones his whole career been the guy that's held up as, imagine if great athletes like Jon Jones fought in MMA all the time. He's two brothers in the NFL and all of that. To say Jon Jones is a fighter, not an athlete, is one of the most ludicrous things I think we've ever heard said in this show.
Jon Jones started fighting because he had his first child.
He got a girl knocked up. That's what he's.
Jon Jones started fighting. He dropped out of college, where he was a JUCO wrestling with aspirations of being a wrestler, because he was starting a family, surprisingly starting a family. So while I do think that Jon Jones is a terrific athlete and clearly comes from a very athletic family, His brother Chandler had a good season last year for the Las Vegas Raiders, has been a very good defensive end for a number of years. His older brother Arthur has a Super Bowl title, played on a couple of very good teams, had a good run in the NFL. He's clearly an athlete. But to say he was born a fighter and feels a little bit overboard. Now, I will also say that Sean's assessment of Cyril Gane, all he does is train. We had reports going into this of Ciryl himself saying, I'm kind of lazy. And I spoke to him about this last week and was like, okay, let's clear the air here. Do you train between fights? What's the scoop? And he said, early in my career, I was perfect. What did I need to do? Why did I need to be showing up all the time? It was easy. But since Francis Ngannou, I've changed things up. I'm in here more often. That being said, there's a difference to me between camp and being in the gym. And when I'm just in the gym, I'm working on things. I'm trying to get better. But then there's also camp, and that's when I go hard. And so I don't do that until I get a fight announced. He's now been told you're going to fight one of the greatest of all time. If you think this dude isn't motivated and focused and doing everything he can to win this fight on Saturday, regardless of maybe valid criticisms of the way things have gone for the MMA factory in some big spots thus far, you're crazy. Because this dude is 6'5", legit heavyweight, big problems. I don't know if he wins. I've picked him. Same as Sean, though. I just want to see this fight because for me, there are so many questions that I have about Jon Jones and none of them can be answered until that dude steps in the cage on Saturday. He's said all the right things. As you said, you can choose to side with him and believe the presentations that he's put out there of, I wasn't motivated. How do I get up for Dominic Reyes and Thiago Santos when I've beaten all of these legends, which has absolutely happened. But it's then funny to me that this week he's turning around and going, you guys think Cyril Gane's this great kickboxer. I fought fucking Thiago Santos. Well, which is it, John? Is he a bum that you couldn't get up for? Or is he a world-class striker that puts the fear of God into you? Because those two things sound awful. I'm going to say the right thing when I need to, which kind of has been Jon Jones's MO for his whole career.
That's the way I look at it.
I'm going to say what I got to say to just come across the best as I can. He may still go out there and win this fight, and he may look amazing. And we have no idea until he gets in there. And I cannot wait. I can't wait. Get here Saturday. Let's go.
Harry, your thoughts, sir?
So, fucking hell. I mean, firstly, who cares about picks, right? Honestly, who gives a shit? But to me,
I care because I'm going to prove you all wrong. I'm only joking. Anyways.
the thing that I'm the most interested in this, and we talked about Francis Ngannou and the performance, and he was showing up, he was exposed, whatever. I feel like Francis in the heavyweight division is an enigma amongst enigmas, right? When Francis went out and fought Stipe Miocic, everyone was like, this dude can't wrestle. He doesn't know how to wrestle. He's not tried to learn wrestling. There's just no development whatsoever other than in his hands. And then he comes out in the second fight, he sprawls on a single leg, and the entire world erupts over MMA Twitter, including myself. I visibly gasped when it happened. I was like, oh, no. What the fuck are we seeing, right? And then it was like, okay, this dude's fucking unbeatable, right? Nobody's going to touch this dude if you can't take him down. If I'm Cyril Gane and I'm stepping in there having spent as many years as I have with him, I feel like, and I'm not saying it's an anomaly of a fight, but I think we should justify this with context that, one, Cyril's taken a few licks from that man, and he knows what it's like to take a few licks from that man. And he's also been in the wrestling room with him when Francis has asked what a single leg is, or what a sprawl is, or whatever. And so when you're fighting him, I wonder, as I'm Cyril Gane, how much of that does it feel like, oh, he's the same guy, or I'm in the same room? How much is he tactically aware of the big power coming that he doesn't even give a shit about the wrestling? Because, past his prologue is the saying, right? When we're against Johnny Bones Jones, are we scared of power? I don't think so. John Bones has never been a massive hitter. Okay, if he tells Donald Cormier that he's going to knock him out with a left high kick, and Donald Cormier decides to leave his fucking chin out, things can happen, right? The main questions I have coming in from this, and we could do the X's and O's of the fight a little bit later and I'll expand, but the big thing is Jon Jones is fighting one of the longest fighters he has fought. So the reach advantage isn't as drastic as it has been. Is he going to be able to break the range 50 pounds, 40 pounds heavier than he ever has been against a guy who is, as you rightly said, Mr. O'Neal, he's elusive, he's fast, and he actually has kickboxing credentials other than, you know, Ernesto Hust's younger brother, Thiago Santos, from another country, right? I don't know. I honestly don't know. Are we going to see Jon be able to enact the fight IQ that we have seen? Because one of the things that used to interest me, or was going to interest me, is that heavyweight, Bones was going to have more time, because generally guys are slower, right? Generally, they're a bit ploddier on the feet. They're going to load up a touch more, and it takes a bit of time to move that mass. With Ciryl, that's not the case. He moves very, very fast. And my fear for Jon Jones is, like Shawnee said, where is he? Because we can't expect him to be 23-year-old Jones, 25-year-old Jones, even 27-year-old Jones. We can't expect that. He's lived a life. MMA moves past fighters quicker than they can blink their eyes. And if Cyril Gane is the truth, he'll go out there and he'll show it on Saturday night.
Yeah, as will Jon Jones as well, where I feel the power lays in his hands is with his fight IQ, whereas with Francis, Sean, and me and you discussed this recently on the Patreon as well. With Francis, it was a lot of power-based wrestling. Jon Jones isn't going to bring power-based wrestling. He's going to bring in a very technical side of wrestling and use his setups to try and trap Ciryl number one, get close into the body lock and try and take him down. What's his best route to kind of do that whilst staying out of trouble from Cyril Gane and staying away from his power? And I'm just wondering, will Ciryl be as elusive in rounds 3, 4, and 5? Because from what I've seen in his last couple of fights, there is a slight tendency for him to slow down after the second round.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that, to be honest. I think he's pretty good cardio. If the fight goes his way, look, if the fight doesn't go your way, or if it's a close fight, everyone's cardio is going to struggle into the third, fourth, and fifth round. I don't think he's any different. But look, the thing for Jon Jones is exactly the key to what Harry said there. Can he break the distance of Ciryl? I don't know. I really don't know. Like, you can set up your takedowns all you want against someone like Gane, but to actually get him down when he's expecting him to come is going to be very tough. Like what Francis had that Jon Jones won't have is the surprise element. Like no one was expecting. Francis probably wasn't expecting coming into camp to take him down. Look, it was probably the knee injuries, and it was probably a few different things that made him adjust his game plan and made him, switch things up against Ciryl. And like, has he closed that gap now since? Okay, you'd be very hard to close a gap towards Jon Jones, but also you're fighting a guy, like I joked earlier on Jon Jones about beating up middleweights and stuff, but myself and Harry did a podcast at January last year. So 14, 15 months ago, we talked about Jon Jones being a bully, and what Jon Jones loves to do is come in there and bully guys. As Spencer said, this guy's 6'5". He's fighting against. Is he going to be able to bully him? He's going to be able to go across the cage and just take him down willy-nilly whenever he wants. Because you know what Jon Jones usually had against other guys is he was bigger and taller and longer. Fair enough. Doesn't have that against Ciryl. That's unquestionable. But the speed and athleticism as well is another thing he had against most people. Against Gane, he doesn't have that either, especially the fact that Gane is used to his weight and Jon Jones will be putting on the weight. Now, the weird thing about Jones is I actually saw a quote just before we started here. And Jones said he got up to 250-ish or something like that. Didn't like it, didn't like the way he carried his weight, and got back down to 240-ish or whatever it might be. That'd be a massive worry for me if I was a Jon Jones fan. The fact that he's struggling to carry the weight at the weight class is a massive struggle. And it was funny, you could correlate. I was thinking about Jones and McGregor and the correlation between them. That's one correlation. The first time McGregor went up to 170, he just could not carry that weight. And it was the reason he lost to Nathan Diaz, with another couple of things thrown in there as well. But the main reason for me, and I think the ability for Jon Jones, like McGregor, to bully people who he is bigger than, taller than, is going to weigh up a weight class. But also, you talked about him having the best fight IQ of anyone. The fight IQ is all well and good if you have so many advantages over other people. That's what you saw me say about Jon Jones. He beat the other people where they were at their best, and he was able to do that. That's going to be harder and harder to do fighting up at heavyweight all the time. And one last thing before I throw it back to you, and just because I know we're going to go into even more the tactics and technique and stuff, especially Harry is here, but we spoke the last time, briefly about the Makhachev-Volkanovski fight, maybe flying under the radar a little bit. And, we kind of decided before that maybe not to talk too much about it because everyone had gotten into it. I feel like this one has fallen massively fucking under the radar. And I just wonder, I wonder, is it like on purpose for some reason? Because like, it feels like the UFC have gotten an awful lot of shit because of the whole Francis thing. Myself and Spencer did a podcast about that before, rightly in some realms and wrongly, I think, in others. But also, like, do they trust Jon Jones? Like, they have the, what's his name? Not Rakhmonov, Pavlovich.
Sergey Pavlovich.
Pavlovich to come in if someone falls out, someone being Jon Jones, more than likely. It just feels like they're kind of letting this one slide in under the radar a little bit. If they got Jon Jones as heavyweight champion, maybe then they'll start to promote him. Just to me, all feels a little bit weird there this week. And even though we're into the week, it's Thursday here in Ireland now, we're into the week, we're into the fight week. We can't say, they'll promote it the further it gets in. The bits and pieces are there, but it all just feels a little bit odd to me. And us as MMA fans, we can't wait for it. It's possibly going to be a great fight. Hopefully going to be a great fight. The closer I get, the more doubts I have about Jon Jones, to be honest. But yeah, I thought that was just worth mentioning too.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked your comparison with Jon and Conor there. I do feel there's a slight difference I feel that Jon has taken the 3 years to probably try and get adjusted to the weight, but we don't know yet because you need those live rounds to kind of truly figure that out. Whereas that Conor's was over as a space of a couple of weeks, and then we've seen a better performance after a longer period of time to get ready as well. I guess, did you have something to say, Shawnee?
No. Sorry. I think the one thing as well, just before I throw it back, I think with Jones, right, the expectation of greatness is such a tough thing, and like I saw, and maybe you'd be able to tell me who they showed like 3 training partners that he had. Like one was Walt Harris and a couple of other lads. Like to just further the McGregor comparison.
Walt Harris,
Maurice
Jorgen De Castro, and Maurice Green were the 3 guys that were mentioned in the embedded series.
But who's Ciryl training with?
Yeah, but that's not the point here. The point is Jon Jones is probably going to get in there, baiting the shit out of lads.
Yeah.
And act like and there's actually nothing wrong with that at times. I don't know whether that's a plus or a minus, but
I mean, Conor kind of did the same as well.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the further the comparison with McGregor, but anyway.
Spencer, I guess the big talking point here is, and the big question hanging over Jon Jones, is it, I feel, look, we're not going to see the same Jon Jones. It's impossible. At 35, up a weight class, we're not going to see the excellence that we have seen in his younger career. That's out the window. The big question is it the motivation? Is it a dip? When did you first notice that there has been a dip and that Jon Jones, could be got at? A lot of people argue it was the Oven St. Preux fight. I mean, you have good performances against Cormier and Gustafsson after that. I feel from Jon, when did you start to feel that maybe Jon Jones's time is coming close to be up? Maybe someone is going to get a legitimate win over him.
I mean, it certainly was an OSP. I was there for that. It was his first fight in a little bit, and he was supposed to fight DC. And so you just get deflated. That one to me is he still won every round. He still controlled and dominated that fight. Like, there was no part of that where I was like, okay, hang on. Thiago Santos started to be a little bit like, there were pieces of the Anthony Smith fight, just him making the mistake of kneeing Anthony Smith in the head. Like, Jon doesn't do those things. He never used to do those things where there was little, to me, that's a mental error. And for the longest time, Jon Jones didn't make mental errors. The thing that was great about him was that he didn't make mental errors in the cage, inside the octagon, outside of the cage, to address Harry's reaction. Outside of the cage, he made all kinds of stupid choices. But that knee was the first part Thiago Santos was the first fight where it was, okay, this is closer than I think it should be. And this guy looks like he's working on 2 bum knees, and yet this is still close. And then Dominic Reyes, I mean, I scored the fight for Reyes. I've watched it back dozens of times and scored the fight for Reyes. And like, regardless of what has happened for Reyes since, I think he went into that fight off a close fight with Volkan Ozdemir, and then goes out and gives Jon Jones, like, fights a really smart tactical fight against Jon Jones, where he's using his length and he's using his range and his movement. And now Jon Jones is going in with a guy that can use length and use range and use movement. And it's his division, not Jon's. Jon's the one coming in with all of the pressure, all of the expectation that he comes back, that he's going to be great again. And Cyril Gane just gets to turn up and be like, cool, I'm going to fight this dude. So for me, it was a little bit of Santos. I mean, this is the crazy thing about Jon Jones, right? It was one fight. It was one, maybe 2 fights, 1.5 fights where you start going, I'm not sure. Because a few fights back, he said going into Alexander Gustafsson 2, well, everybody thinks that this fight was close and that this guy can run with me. I'm going to show you that that's not at all true, and beat the holy hell out of Alexander Gustafsson. And so maybe he comes back and just says, look, you guys don't believe me that I wasn't motivated, that I wasn't focused, that I didn't really train that much. Cool. Watch this. But as with all of it, I just got to see it. I got to see it to believe it. And so Saturday, please get here. I want to see every fight on this card. But if you gave me the option of paying $5 right now to jump to the main event on Saturday, I'm in, and I'll cover your tabs too.
Fuck, I'd pay 50. Harry, when we get into the cage, and when the two gentlemen, not when we physically get into the cage ourselves, when Jon Jones and Ciryl get into the cage, what are you expecting to see? If you were to describe how the fight was going to play out in your mind, how would you describe that?
Okay, so I obviously picked Ciryl, so I'll sort of map out why I think that happens, right? So we sort of already covered the facets of what we think the X's and O's in terms of their sort of physicality and all of those things sort of mapped together. I think Ciryl is a better athlete at this time in his career than Jon Jones is. He's obviously a bit younger, less miles on the clock, etc., etc. I think the speed is in Cyril's favor. The footwork, I think, is very interesting. They have a different pattern. They have a different style. Bones is light on his feet, but is flat-footed, right? He likes to slide in and out of range of things. He likes to use that range. He pours that lead hand out all the time. You know, if he doesn't poke Ciryl in the eye, we haven't had a Jon Jones fight, right? So we need some of that. And that sort of shows you how he uses his range. He is so cognizant of having that left hand, and, you know, when he switches to southpaw, his right hand stretched out to its absolute extremity, fingers wide, to force fighters to stay at a range that he is comfortable with. And so Ciryl is going to be really happy to fight on the back foot, fight laterally, move his feet. And he has a footwork pattern that's almost like dancing. It's almost like you'd see Wonder Boy do. His heels are always off the floor, and he's always on the balls of his feet moving. I think that inside that first minute, and we're going to find out really inside that first minute who's prepared a little bit better for this fight than the other person, is whether Jon chases Ciryl and Cyryl's able to counter, or whether Ciryl has to break that distance of Jon Jones. Now, we've already said that the reach deficit is not as vast as it has been for Ciryl, and I think actually this is where we're going to see Ciryl have success early. Is usually Jon has this extremity arm outposted, and lads are looking to the side of it, and it's like a 3-meter yardstick, and they're like, how am I supposed to get to this cunt? Like, this is a fucking massive jousting arm. That's not going to be the case for Ciryl, I don't think. I think Ciryl is going to be more willing to stand closer to the pocket and use his head movement and use that footwork to alleviate that angle and land shots on Jon Jones. Then I think we see some questions about Jon Jones, the bully mentality, the going up, the carrying the weight. Because if somebody takes the fight to Jon Jones and somebody looks to land on Jon Jones, what do we see? what do we see? In terms of grappling, you're absolutely right that Jon sets up grappling really well mid-combination with his footwork. He finds angles fantastically well. He can counter wrestle. He can find his way into those body lock takedowns and into the outside trips fantastically. I think, though, and this is something I don't have evidence for yet because it hasn't happened, but I feel like if I'm Ciryl and I'm fighting a guy like Francis Ngannou who is wrestling with pure mass and power, that can be actually way harder to defend against than somebody that's trying to technically take you down. Because when, and you know, you've grappled, when you're fighting or grappling with a guy that doesn't know how to play by the rules and is just doing a bit of mad bastard stuff, sometimes it's way more difficult because you're not expecting those reactions to come. And so when you're Jon Jones and you've watched all the tape, there is so much tape on the way Jon Jones likes to take people down. Can you game plan for that? Yes, you can game plan for that. You can say as Ciryl, okay, well, I'm gonna be able to move my hips more drastically when Jones is coming in. I'm going to try to square up. I'm going to try and dig an underhook. I'm going to try and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that help him? Is he successful? I don't know. I don't know, because we have seen Ciryl has had problems with the wrestling before. In terms of pockets,
can I ask you one small question before you go on? In the Francis Ngannou fight in the 5th round, he fought 2 rounds where Ngannou was looking to take him down. Cyril Gane did. And I watched the fight back recently and I was very surprised. I thought there was 2 grave errors that Ciryl made in that last round. And that was number 1, to go for the takedown himself in that 5th round. And then when he did get the takedown, he decided to shoot for whether a knee bar or a heel hook or something like that as well, which allowed Francis late in the fight. Can he afford to make those kind of mistakes against someone like Jon Jones, or do you even think he will be in a position to have those mistakes made?
How did you score the fight?
How did I score that fight? I scored it for Francis. It was a close fight, no doubt, but I mean, those are mistakes. Maybe that. I don't think.
It feels like people think Francis went out and Bo nickeled him for the whole fucking fight or something. Like
a lot of people. I wasn't saying that.
No, I'm not saying you're saying, but it feels like that's what people are thinking. It's like, oh, he went out here and fucking he chills on him versus Anderson Silva sort of thing. Like Gane could have won that fight. Like a lot of people think Gane won the fight. It was a very, very close fight. Like he'll come from that as well. Look like, as Harry said earlier on, Francis came from that fight as well. Like, and yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit overplayed, I think. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, well, we'll see if it is anyway on Saturday night, one way or another. Harry, sorry for derailing you a little bit there. Please continue, sir.
In terms of answering the question, I think you're absolutely right. In terms of somebody on top of you, Jones has far more weapons than Francis. I don't think Francis is going to be looking to set up Darcy's. He's not going to try and roll for guillotines. He's not going to look to wrap you up and take you back. He's not going to be looking to sit in smashed out half and land shots. He's not going to, you know, the ability that Jones has from a technical perspective to make Cyryl's life horrendous on the ground is far, far, far more than Francis. We know what Francis is going to do. He's going to try and pick up those fucking sandmine spades and absolutely destroy you with them, right? And so that, again, in itself is a little bit easier to defend because you know what's coming. There's not going to be submissions. There's not going to be kimuras. There's not going to be whatever. He's just going to try and smash you. I think if Ciryl has watched anything from the Alexander Volkanovski performance, it's that if you get taken down, the way to get back up is one, and most paramountly, is to stay calm and not to make silly decisions. It's to keep your inside frames, and it's to get yourself to the fence, drag yourself back up. I can't imagine we're going to see Ciryl do, you know, reverse butterfly sweeps with far lat grips and all that stuff, whatever. But if it happens and he is taken down, and I wouldn't be shocked if he is taken down in this fight, that he must stay calm and he must put himself in the best positions to get back up. I also think with the Francis thing, to Spencer's point earlier, Ciryl has said himself, he kind of was riding his own luck a little until Francis has come in. And that embarrassment, that loss stings fighters, right? And now we're going to see something very interesting because he has an opportunity to come out and perform differently. I agree with Shawnee. It was a close fight. And I also think with the leg lock, Ciryl posts his hips up and looks to collect the leg. I'm not saying he wasn't going to go for the leg lock because I think he was going for it. But if you notice, it's like sort of a headquarters position and Francis sweeps him at the same time. Francis tucks his own leg back and takes the legs out of Ciryl to give him no choice. Now, did he make the mistake of scooping up the leg and like looking for a leg lock? Yeah, he did, sure. In the 5th round of MMA fights, an outside heel hook's probably not going to get you the finish, lads.
I think he might have been even distracted by the fact that he may have thought Ngannou was rightly injured at the time as well, and maybe trying to target that maybe as a last ditch.
To be fair, he had also heel hooked Don'Tale Mays at one point in his career.
The legend.
Thought, I can just do this to Francis.
Can I ask y'all one question, right? Let's say this goes 25 minutes. I think most people do agree we'll go along. Right, here's the question, right? Out of those 25 minutes, how many minutes will be fought on the ground? What do you reckon?
Sub 5.
Like full on the ground, or are we talking like along the fence and
no, on the ground, yeah.
Well?
Full on the ground, yeah.
Yeah, less than 5.
About, if I can see how the fight is going, around 10 minutes, I would say 10 minutes.
But yeah, I would say that 5 and like probably closer to 0 than 5. Like when I'm visiting,
like this is just both of them on the mat. We're not talking about cage control here because I think Jones is going to try and get him there, and he'll land these pitty patty shots and try and control him is the big one. Like I think what we've seen with Ciryl that we hadn't seen before in the Tai Tuivasa fight is he's got that dog in him because he was forced to bring that dog out, and that's something that's definitely going to prove very fruitful for him in this fight. Do you
not think that was like just a clearly like lower level guy into Tuivasa now? And I'm arguing against my own point here because I'm somehow find myself on the Cyril Gane bandwagon here, but it's a little bit like, when Jose Aldo goes and fights Jeremy Stevens, he can open up because he knows he's going to fucking destroy him. I think that was a little bit like that with the Tuivasa one.
Well, I think he could have tried to outpoint him for the rest after. When someone get that, that's the kind of point I was looking at. It was like, sorry, I'll let you come in one sec, Spencer. For me, with that, like after someone gets hurt, you can shut down, you can lose that confidence. And I feel that Ciryl didn't. He kind of took it with the bull by the horns and went for him and fought fire with fire. And we hadn't seen that from before. And like, we're going to see a new and improved Cyril Gane coming in here as well. Like we're kind of swapping around here, Shawnee. I kind of started on the Jones bandwagon. You started on the Gane. I'm trying to cull my, I don't know. It's just that's the way I've been thinking. Spencer,
I asked him about that Tuivasa thing, right? Because like as he and I were talking last week for a story that is up on UFC.com now, he said like Tai Tuivasa touched me first, and I was like, yeah. What was that like, dude? Like that big fella puts you down, and it's at home, and it's your big moment, and you've been looking forward to this. He's like, well, you saw what happened, and I was like, right, but walk me through what goes through your head. And he's like, I got up and was like, okay, he's got to be full of confidence right now. So I had to get up and go across there and say, nah, this isn't fucking happening. Like, we're not only are you not going to build on this, but we're not getting past this. You're done now. Like we're just finished now. I've been having fun. This is great. You hit me. Ah, shit. Now you need to go away because I need to have this party here in Paris. And so the one thing we haven't touched on yet that I think is really important to this fight, and it's a really basic thing to me. Jon Jones can have all of the technical and IQ and game plan and strategic advantages that he wants, that he needs, all of those things. It's heavyweight MMA, and one shot erases all of that. I mean, we've never seen him hit by somebody of this size. And I know he's trained with heavyweights and all of those things. Maurice Green ain't going out there trying to knock his head into the third row. Jorgen De Castro ain't going out there trying to bury body kicks into his ribs that make him fold over and not get up. He can be as technically brilliant as he's always been, and Cyril Gane can hit him with something that just ends his night. And it's not a question of Jon being not good enough, not skilled enough, not anything. It's just he's in with a bigger dude.
Like, I have an obscure question, if I can.
Yeah.
We mentioned Ciryl and the sort of almost lack of mental focus, right? Because if he goes out there against Taito Avaso and he's like, I could just end this at any moment, then go do that, right? Go out and end him in 25 seconds or whatever it is, right? Jon Jones, we've seen that he needs to be the bully. He thrives on being the bully. The Lyoto Machida guillotine, right? We've seen it. The Vitor Belfort armbar, we've seen it, right? Like when he's in that element, when he knows the fight is finished, you sort of see him come alive and explode into this like a rising phoenix type thing. I'd love to hear your opinions on the mental battle here. And I know this is not necessarily something we're going to be able to speak on vastly, but Ciryl seems to me as somebody that isn't focused from second one and likes to do the playing with his food type thing until it might get a bit hairy and then fuck, we've got to pull something out of the bag, like a fucking death by an outside heel hook, whatever. And then you've got Bones Jones that if he builds up a head of steam and gets some confidence behind him, you might be fucked. Like,
do you think they're a bit similar though? Like, if you're to
right,
if you're to look at both of them, like they both kind of like are so technically proficient and confident that they are happy to go like 5 minutes or 5 rounds or however long it takes. Like that's a very hard thing to do. Like it's almost harder to like not go for the knockout because you're so confident in your ability to win the fight, no matter if you're fighting until fucking next Saturday. It's that level of cockiness is almost more than the McGregor level of cockiness where I'm going to knock this lad out, you know? And the thing about Jon Jones as well is, and I was talking to someone about this the other day, right? It's like people who believe in God or believe in a higher power have this fucking stone cold, like just on-killing belief that someone like me wishes I'd fucking had. I wish I had the ability to believe in something as fervently as those people have it. Jon Jones does not have that, right? He's a complete bullshitter when he talks about that. But Jon Jones is God to Jon Jones. Jon Jones believes in himself as much as the most fervent fucking, God-fearing, Bible-bashing person in the world believes in God.
The pastor, wishes that John believed in Jesus?
Yes, exactly. More so even. He believes in himself so much. And that's one key to point that is, right? If he's still good, and I believe he'll still have that. I believe that belief will never go unless maybe he gets knocked out fucking cold here on Saturday night.
Yeah,
exactly. But what if he has that belief and he does no longer have the ability? Like that's when you get into fucking trouble. And you know what happens then? That's when you get absolutely destroyed in there. And I'm like,
Can you see a fight play out in your head where you see Jon Jones getting destroyed on Saturday night?
He's 35 years old. He hasn't fought in 3 years. I was saying it to Graham the other day, like when thinking about like maybe little techniques in this, it's like, what's the big thing that's come into MMA in the last 3 years? And Graham immediately said the calf kick, right? Jon Jones, he's tiny little fucking calves. He's gone up the heavyweight against the guy who fights on the fucking outside and kicks as hard as anyone we've ever fucking seen in MMA. Cyril Gane is going to hit him with shots in the first 10 seconds, 90 seconds that he has never seen before. Never. How is he going to react to them? Like that is, and like that might be a very small thing, but it might be a very fucking big thing very, 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 very quickly for Jon Jones in here. Like
could be one
fight
kick.
Could be over in 2 minutes. It could be over in 2 minutes. It really fucking could. And I actually, what Spencer said there a minute ago, I understand what he's saying. You go up the heavyweight and get caught with one shot, and absolutely you can. I don't necessarily buy into that, right? I don't think that. I think this is going to be 25 minutes, 5 rounds of a technical stand-up match. When I asked the question earlier, how many of the 25 minutes will be on the ground? I believe 0. I don't think this fight will hit the ground at all. I think this is going to be maybe against the fence, maybe for a second or something like that. But I think this is going to be a real technical stand-up matchup. And I do believe that the belief in Jon Jones will force him to walk through calf kicks, will force him to keep going and keep going and keep going. But at the end of the day, it's very hard to keep going if someone like Cyril Gane has such an advantage over you in that area. And maybe he doesn't. Maybe Jon Jones will be able to win that outside battle game. Who knows? We'll see.
I can foresee this like being an absolutely terrible fight too, from a technical standpoint, where
100%.
I could see it being I've gone through so many scenarios in my head, and what Jon Jones has done in the past. We said him liking to bully, and he likes to bully by beating you at your own game as well, which I think this is absolutely awful fight. He can't do that in this fight. I feel that he's going to be fighting a losing battle if he's going to try and tit for tat on the striking with Cyril Gane in this fight. I feel his best route is a gritty, dirty fight where he's pushing him against the cage. He's trying to take him down. He's trying to tire out his arms, trying to tire out his legs, landing knees, just making it an awful, awful night and taking away the distance, number one, from Cyril Gane that he needs to do, and also taking away that striking and that movement as well. Because if you're up against the cage and if he has the ability to hold him against the cage and try and take him down, which we don't know yet, but if he does have that ability, I think it's going to be a long night for Cyril Gane, myself as well. And Jesus, everything that we just talked about is just, oh man, I'm so fucking hyped for this fight.
Can I just mention the judging criteria as well, just quickly? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Jon Jones hasn't fought many times under the new judging criteria. When he has, he's almost lost. Like, not a great fighter to fight under the criteria where effective striking means more than numbers. Like, you could see this fight being Jon Jones landing 120 strikes, Cyril Gane landing 79, and Cyril Gane winning, 4 rounds to 1 or something like that. I could absolutely see that. And then Jon Jones posting screenshots of Verdict MMA and the fucking strike stats and all of that. Could absolutely see that on next Saturday night. Really good. Really
Jon
good.
Jones.
Verdict MMA catching a stray.
Yeah,
you might as well go into the toilet, take a picture of your big fucking shit you just took and put it up on Twitter as opposed to Verdict MMA.
True that. I think one thing Jon Jones does have a secret weapon coming into this fight, lads. David Goggins is coming in to be with him for the rest of the week. He'll be in his ear. I'm only joking, guys. Relax. We'll move on to the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko, who has some questions of her own to answer as well coming in here, because, we saw a couple of chinks in the armor when we last seen Valentina inside the cage. She was brought to a split decision by Talia Santos. And I honestly, for me, Spencer, I do not see Alexa Grasso being able to cause Valentina Shevchenko as much problems. If we are to go off maybe where her weakness is, it could be that she could be exposed in the grappling, and Talia Santos tried her best to do that in the last fight. But for me, I think that this fight against Alexa Grasso is the perfect stylistic matchup in her, where it's, a forward moving pressure boxer, where I just feel that Valentina Shevchenko, all she needs to do is go in there and kickbox her. And I feel that that's going to be enough to get the job done. What are some of the big questions that you're asking Valentina? I think the biggest one is she past her sell-by date? Or was it just an off night against Talia Santos that night?
Yeah, that's the obvious one, right? If UFC 275 was just a night where she wasn't completely her best, and credit to Talia Santos, who fought well, did the right things, had some success. If that was just kind of Valentina's one where she's not the absolute best, and to be clear, still won the fight, then Alexa Grasso gets wrecked on Saturday. Just straight up, like Jessica-eyed. Kicked in the head and a little skip by and away we go and all like that. And so this to me all comes to, because like for Grasso to win this fight, she needs to be perfect. She needs to do everything perfectly. She needs to mix in wrestling in timely manners. She needs to box really well. She needs to get off the center line. She needs to move really well. Are you going to do that for 25 minutes against this woman who, even if she's at 85% of her highest level of dominance, still probably beats Alexa Grasso? Now, Valentina turns 35 next week. We're talking about age of fighters and miles and all of these things. She has been a martial artist since she was 4 years old. She has traveled the globe competing since she was a teenager. At some point, the miles do catch up. I think she's the one person of all the champions that is like least likely to have the banana peel moment where all the champion stuff and it gets hard to get up for it and all like that, because this is life. She's not doing the Kamaru Usman thing and being in Black Panther. She's not doing the Ngannou thing, being in Fast 10 or whatever it was. She's just about this. but we're going to find out, right? Father Time catches up with everybody. And so there's going to be a point where Valentina Shevchenko loses. Shawnee says it all the time, right? At some point, all of these champions lose. It just happens. Is this where it happens? I don't think so, because as good as Alexa Grasso has looked, even in beating Viviane Araujo, which is a good win, even in submitting Joanne Wood, which was a good finish, they weren't fights and they weren't performances where I think any of us here went, she's the one to get Val. She's got to be perfect Saturday, and I don't think she can be perfect.
Yeah, indeed. Harry, when you're looking at this fight, I seen you nodding and agreeing as I was kind of describing Alexa Grasso's style. That kind of gives me the opinion that you don't feel that she has the tools in her locker to take out Valentina on Saturday night.
100%. She's never gotten a finish by hands in the UFC. And so if we're looking at what are we going to do here to really break down Valentina? Is she going to out footwork Valentina? No, you summed her up perfectly. A forward moving pressure boxer. The kicks aren't great. The footwork is boxing centric, and she can grapple. She can do she can do some things on the ground. She can do some things against the cage, but it's not Valentina Shevchenko. And there's this big asterisk and whatever, but we have to take Valentina at her merits. And we have to say that Valentina on her worst day probably beat the Valentina that goes in and fought Tyler Santos, destroys Alexa Grasso. Because Alexa's not that big and powerful as Tyler Santos is. There's not the same dynamism in her takedowns. There's not the same setups. There's not the same fear on the feet of landing or taking a big shot that's going to rock you and hurt you. Valentina's clinch game is unbelievable. We see her hit all the trips and the elbows and the knees in the clinch. We see her enter those positions, exit that range, strike off angles. I don't see where Alexa's going to have enough success to win significant portions of rounds. And if we're talking about what Shawnee's already said in the judging criteria, Valentina hits really hard. Alexa doesn't. She hits with volume and she can overwhelm you, but she doesn't strike with big power like Valentina does. And I don't know. It's hard for any fighter in the world to do 25 minutes of perfection. And I'm just not sure that we've seen ever 15 or 25 minutes of perfection from Alexa Grasso.
100%. Shawnee, I kind of alluded to maybe some weakness in Valentina Shevchenko's ground game, but you feel that this is where she probably has the advantage in this fight, and that's likely where you're going to see her getting her down and look for the submission.
Yeah, I don't really think she has a bad ground game or anything like that, or a weakness in the ground game. I think her weakness might just be she's getting a little bit older. She's 34 years of age. As Spencer said, she's been around for a long, long time in MMA and Muay Thai and all of that. Plus, she has, I think Jon Jones has kind of used as an excuse a little bit about, the challenges weren't as big as they were before. But for Jones, he was out for a year with drugs, and he was out for another year, and I don't know, it seemed weird. Whereas Valentina, she's 100% been in there and beating contender after contender after contender after contender, so much so that the people who were fucking 17 when she got into the UFC are now her contenders. So I think that is an issue for her. I also think that Valentina probably is going to leave the division after this. And I think she probably needs to as well, because we briefly mentioned it before, Andy, and I think I said it in the podcast as I was like, I don't think this is the fight she might be cut out on, but I think maybe the next one or the one after, if she meets a Firo or a Blanchfield or something like that, even though you look at the best Valentina Shevchenko, and I don't think they'd be a match for her, but I don't know if she's still at her best. We saw that in the Santos fight, but sometimes we conflate fighters, and maybe we're conflating Amanda Nunes with Valentina Shevchenko a little bit, because Nunes has put in 2 performances now. One was fucking terrible, and another one was bad against a bad fighter twice. Whereas Valentina Shevchenko looked like she had an off night, and she has an easier matchup coming in here. I just really think it's time for her now. The weird thing is, right, I definitely think Amanda's fallen or is about to fall off a cliff, or arguably already has. Shevchenko needs to catch her now, right? Before she kind of does the same. And I think it's the time to make that fight now before it's too late. But just briefly on the fight itself, I was looking here on Sherdog, 5'5" Valentina, 5'5" Alexa Grasso. But Valentina is a 5'5" fighter who doesn't necessarily fight short, right? But fights compact. Let's put it that way. She's a bit of a Alicia Martinez, maybe, right? And Alexa Grasso is a 5'5" fighter who tries to fight long. She tries to fight with her jab and her straights down the middle. When you have that, usually what you end up with is a clinch, because you've one person kind of thrown in their jab, goes over their shoulder, maybe the other person's in close, they come inside, and then one person has their head around, leads to a clinch, right? Harry mentioned it. I said it in the betting show and a few other places. You get that fight into a clinch, and Alexa, she might get out of one, she might get out of two, she might push her against the cage a couple of times and survive it a couple of times, but there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times it happens in that fight where she gets tripped and she falls on her back, arse, or neck, and she ain't getting up for a few minutes after that. I think Shevchenko's going to win by submission here. I think the clinch is the clinch in the middle of the cage is almost inevitable. I think the throw is almost inevitable, and the submission is coming. 7 submissions in her career, only 8 knockouts. 7 submissions, only 8 knockouts. Don't wiggle your finger at me. 10 or 10 quid.
Let's do it. Let's do it. The first bet on the preview show. Money, cash,
Harry.
money.
I bet you.
Absolutely not. But I would say I don't. I think, and maybe this is harsh, right? I think Grasso's going to have to give her back. And because Valentina's going to put her in the crucifix and just fucking smoke her. I don't think Grasso's got enough to escape an arm and give her back. And that's why I'm not picking a submission. Like if we were doing if it's somebody a little bit better on the ground that has the ability to scramble a little bit better and work herself out of difficult positions, I'm with you 1,000%. I don't think it's because Valentina won't take it. I just think she's going to put Grasso in a clinch, in a crucifix and just finish it.
That's very fair. My little bit of thinking was I think Grasso might panic a little bit and maybe give up her back before Valentina even has the chance to get into it. But I 100% see your logic, yeah.
I'll take that tenor bet.
Yep.
Done. Who, from me or Harry? From me.
Let's
Okay,
go.
let's go.
I'll take that bet. I'll take the TKO.
That bet is brought to you by the SevereMMA Picks and Play show. Tune in every Friday with myself and Spencer, and we'll talk about that in more detail. The virtual handshake. It's official now, guys. That's it. So just to be clear, the bet is Shevchenko to win by submission, Shevchenko not to win by submission. Correct. Perfect.
No. Whoa,
I've got it by
whoa.
TKO.
Yes.
Okay.
If she wins, bet void.
If she wins by a decision, it's a push.
Hey, we want to keep it all straight and narrow here, lads. No fast ones. I know Sean Sheen down there.
I was the opposite. You were fucking pushing it. What are you talking about?
Right. There'll be certainly bets going down for Jeff Neal and Shavkat Rakhmonov, and the bets could probably be leaning towards that of Shavkat Rakhmonov, who I believe is the boogeyman of the welterweight division right now. Harry, when you look at his game, and it's a very, very good game at that, 16 wins, all of them coming by way of finish, 8 knockouts, 8 submissions. It's just the epiphany of a well-rounded fighter, and this guy is special.
He could be. He really, really could be. He passed all the tests so far with fucking absolute flying colors, right? I think the interesting thing that Jeff Neal poses for me that Neil Magny didn't is that they both are, I don't want to call them veterans in a negative sense, right? But Jeff Neal's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. Neal is a tall, long, rangy fighter. We know what's coming. And we epitomize Neil Magny as being sort of that veteran stalwart where if you pass him and you pass him well, we can expect really big things. If you grind out a decision against him, maybe we expect a little bit less. If you lose, there's things to talk about. Jeff Neal is a very elusive fighter. He stands long with his legs, wide with his legs, but really short with his arms, right? And he likes to bounce into the pocket. He likes to explode in. He's happy to fight on the back foot. And we saw against Vicente Luque that he hits hard and can deal big amounts of damage on fighters. The problem, I think, for Shavkat is Shavkat we've seen has a bit of everything. He can take your legs away. He can kick you out. He can clinch. He can drive you against the fence and take you down. He can sub you in transition. He can set up subs and finish you. And he has one of the cleanest 1-2s we've seen in that division. And Shawnee will shout from the rooftops about a good jab.
Fucking
he
love
has
it.
a good jab. And so for Jeff Neal, I think the range is going to be really, really important. Shavkat is a long fighter, fights long, but fights long really, really well. My issue with Shavkat in some of the fights that I've seen is sometimes he can be brought into a firefight. Now, he's won all of the firefights so far, but I don't think being pulled into a firefight against Jeff Neal is the route that I would like him to take if I was his coaching team. I think if it comes to a firefight, I change levels, I take him down, and I just look to ground him out. But if I'm a Jeff Neal, I might want to drag him in. I might want to be inside, outside, be elusive, be frustrating. And the moment he starts to chase, meet him in the middle, jam him, cover that range, get inside, land my shots, and get back out again. And then let's see if he does face a little bit of adversity, what we see after that. Because this is a great test. This is the perfect test for Shavkat Rakhmonov. If he goes and blows out Jeff Neal inside 2 rounds, all right, boys, we've just jump on the train. We're going. All aboard, everyone front carriage, sit down in first class. We're on the way. But I have a feeling that Jeff Neal can not win this necessarily, but he can make this very interesting. And we're going to learn some things about Shavkat Rakhmonov, I think.
Yeah, indeed, Spencer. Like, that's the key. That's what they're trying to do with somebody like Shavkat Rakhmonov here. Give him these tests. And, you know, it's a fair jump up after the Neal Magny fight with someone like Jeff Neal, who's been in there and has performed well in main events and everything like that, and is in good. Like, I feel Jeff Neal is probably fighting to the best of his abilities that we've ever seen him fight in his career so far. So that's ticking off all the boxes for challenges for Shavkat. But that being said, you know, we have to be thinking that this is Shavkat's fight to lose, and that's the way it's kind of been matched up. And what problems do you see, Jeff Neal? Are you similar, kind of along the lines of Harry's way of thinking, that we might see him tested a little bit more than we ever have before?
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Neal can crack, right? We saw it against Vicente Luque, who is a guy that happily engages in firefights and happily gets into big, ugly, dirty fights and has a lot of success in it. And Jeff Neal did a lot of really good things in that fight. Moved well, picked his spots, hurt Luque on multiple occasions, got him out of there in the 3rd round, like carried that power through into the latter stages of this fight. Like, he is a real test. I think people underrate Jeff Neal because he had those 2 losses. He didn't look good in the second of those, especially against Neal Magny. And he took some time after that to reset and regroup. I think people forget that he has a good win over Bilal Muhammad before that has aged very, very nicely, and then got that last win and was like, hey, if Bilal wants a fight, he can come and get this again. And we didn't hear anything from Bilal, who was real quick to say all kinds of things about all kinds of people and who he wants to fight, but he had nothing to say about going in there with Jeff Neal again. That being said, I think Shavkat Rakhmonov, this fight to me feels very similar to when Islam Makhachev was climbing the divisional ladder at lightweight, and we just didn't know really truly how good he was because he hadn't had those tests. Now, Islam got into a championship fight without having to go through some top 5 guys through no fault of his own. But there were those moments where it was like, okay, well, what's he going to do against a tough guy like Drew Dober? What's he going to do against a guy like Dan Hooker? And some of these fights where he just went out and you were like, oh, he's going to do that. This is the moment where Shavkat can prove the like, oh, okay. This is, as Harry said, this is for real. Come and get the ticket. We're going to the top. I spoke with him before this fight through his camp and asked some of these questions, right? Like, what's next after this? And he's like, well, I don't think there's much beyond top 5 and then a title fight. And like, this is a dude that believes right now that he is the best welterweight in the UFC. And he's going to go out and try his damnedest to prove it on Saturday.
Well, good news, fellas. I've already bought your tickets because I'm already on the train. Shawnee, you know me, I'll get excited. But that's the thing. Look, that's the question I'm going to pose to you, Sean. Is it, you know, For me, yes, yeah, Shavkat Rakhmonov has not had that level of competition yet. Obviously, Neal Magny, his toughest test, but to me, it's the way he's putting these guys away and what we've seen in there. Do you think it's legitimate hype? Do you think, are you excited to see him coming in here against someone like Jeff Neal, where he can further prove how good a fighter he is? How I would like to kind of describe him is like a new breed of MMA fighter. I would put him in the same kind of cusp as the likes of Fizaev and Saryukin, those kind of newer breeds of mixed martial artists that we've seen progress over the last couple of years. How do you see Shavkat Rakhmonov, and how do you see the fight playing out?
He's brilliant, yeah, and I think he'll win. I think he'll jab him up, as Harry said, and use his 1-2 and win it that way. What Rakhmonov has that some of the lads you mentioned there have, but I think him more so than any of them, he has a calmness while being highly technical that almost no one that young in their career has ever had in MMA. Like, we've all back in the day, we thought, oh, Rory McDonald, he's the next guy, he's the next like level of MMA, and for a while he was okay. It's very hard to get that next there, but there was an argument for a while that Rory was top 2-3 best welterweights in the world, but Rakhmonov just seems to be the guy who has that ultra confidence, but also it's not a cocky confidence, it's a confidence in facts almost. It's just like he is this good and it comes this naturally to him. Sometimes you hear that nickname, like Randy Couture, the natural. I feel like Rakhmonov should be called the natural. I don't know what that is in fucking, where's he from? Kazakhstan or whatever.
Kazakhstan,
yeah. He is just so natural. And he has as well, it's something that I know the next fight we're going to be talking about is Jalen Turner. That lint, like the lint where he can just touch you from, he can hit you from an area where you can't hit him. For guys who, like, say, Neal Magny or other guys who are big and long and strong, and as Jeff Neal, not as long, and which could be a major problem for him. I think he's the biggest problem for poor old Jeff Neal is he's not going to be able to break that distance, and not even break the distance. Like, he can't get far enough away from Rakhmonov almost. And I think Jalen Turner has a similar thing now against Matthias Gamrot. It's a little bit different, but I just love fighters like that who can fight at such a distance. They're brilliant, and they have what the two of them have as well is that touch of power. I think Turner more so, to be honest, even though he's down at lightweight and obviously fighting smaller guys and stuff, but they have just that little bit of touch of power that when you have, like, there's plenty of guys out there who can like jab from distance and throw 1-2s and stuff. Very few can do it with, as I said, the poise, the confidence and the ability of Rakhmonov. But when you have that power as well added into it, that's world level sort of stuff, and that's where he is.
I know you accused me of ludicrous comments earlier on, but that confidence through facts comment was pretty legit. And I think it was there to be seen in the Jeff Neal fight. There was a sequence that really stuck with me in that fight where Neal Magny, not Jeff Neal, where Neal Magny caught Rakhmonov with a jab, and immediately Rakhmonov was like nodding and said, "Come on, try again." And Magny tried again, and he just got out of the way and absolutely landed a monster jab back. And that is proof of confidence with facts, because we've seen it there. But we've got another one in the lightweight division as well. Big questions to see if Jalen Turner can step up and take out Matthias Gamrot. And I'll go to you first, Spencer. You fancy Jalen Turner to come in and get the job done here? You feel that, Gamrot might get a little bit kind of irked by the length? You think he has too much power for Gamrot? How do you come to that conclusion?
I mean, both of those things sort of factor in for me. I think, as Harry and I talked about on the takeaways after Jalen Turner's last win over Brad Riddell, he feels like a fighter that is starting to understand how to use his range and his length and combine everything together. I also wonder if he's just another one of these athletes that is reaching that point we talk about all the time, right? Where the experience and the talent and everything is coalescing at the right time. And as good as I think Gamrot is, and as much as I love the guy, Shawnee just mentioned it, right? Like, Jalen Turner has that death touch. He just does. And then he's got a great nose for finishing. All 13 or all 12 of his wins are by finish. If he hurts you, you're not getting away from him. And then he's got all of this length. He's got all of this reach. He's got all of these ways to beat you. And look, Gamrot can certainly win this fight. Rightfully the favorite. given all of his pedigree, all of what we've seen from him. But I just wonder if he's starting to creep down a little bit after years of being a world-class competitor, much of which was spent outside of the UFC, where people didn't really get to see and appreciate it. And Jalen Turner's just up on that upswing, where, yeah, this is a bigger step up than Dan Hooker would have been. But if this was Dan Hooker across the cage, I think Jalen Turner gets Dan Hooker out of there too.
Yeah, I would fancy him against Dan Hooker too. He is fighting Mateusz Gamrot, Sean. You know, we have seen him come up through the KSW ranks. I think he's going to be too much here for Jalen Turner. I think the reason is, you know, he'll be probably intelligent enough to stay out of the way of that trouble for a little bit. I just feel that his ground game is next level, and I feel that he's going to probably try and put Jalen Turner on his back here and just take away that confidence early in this fight. I would fancy Gamrot. This is a big step up in competition for Jalen Turner, coming off a very, very good and impressive win over Brad Riddell, that being said.
Yeah, looking at the two of their records here, for guys with, I think, 3 or 4 fights between them in terms of the amount of fights they've had, very hard to see two guys with that many fights having such different levels of competition which they've faced. Jalen Turner has fought some good guys, you know, the standout probably Vicente Luque, who he got knocked out by in a round, you know, and a bunch of other kind of okay lads. Mateusz Gamrot has fought fucking Beneil Dariush, Saryukin, Ferreira, Kuta Taladze, Norman Park, Erbst, who's the champion over in Risen at the moment, Park again another couple of times, Mansour, Bonwa, who's in the Bellator tournament at the moment, one of the best lightweights in the world. He's been fighting really, really, really good guys for a really, really, really long time in really, really big fight nights as well. That level of experience is huge. And I was thinking about, you look at the two of these and you put them together and you might say, like, Jalen Turner's skill set is a very hard skill set from Mateusz Gamrot to live with. But the difference is guys who come from that area, right? We saw for a while with Jan, and we saw with a few other people. They have fought everyone. They have fought every style, every length. Just really good guys with power, guys at wrestling, guys with everything. They've experienced it. Whereas guys from even, you know, Ireland, America, Canada, they haven't faced it. They have not faced that level. And Gamrot at his level has faced all of that and more. And it might play for nothing. But if it's a 50-50 fight, I think that sort of experience will see him through. Now, having watched a good bit of Jalen Turner again yesterday, I absolutely would not rule him out. I respect him as a fighter. I think he's very, very, very good. And, you know, even give him a chance against someone as good as Dariush, I think is a massive compliment. And he definitely does have a chance because, as I said, that touch, that fucking lint and all of that is very hard to beat. But I do think Gamrot will, for the reasons you said there, and I think he'll get inside him. I think he'll take him down. I think he'll make it a very, very tough night on him. But it's one I'm definitely massively looking forward to. And you know what? Credit to the two of these lads for taking it, because there's too many cunts at lightweight who won't take fights against each other. So fair play to them.
Big time. You can't say that about Mateusz Gamrot at all, who's been in there and is continuing to be in there. Look at the loss against Dariush, was the number 2 or number 3 guy in the division. And you know what? It takes an extreme set of balls to go in there with someone like Jalen Turner, Harry, who has everything to gain with a win over Mateusz Gamrot here. How do you see the fight going down?
Similar to Sean, to be honest. But I don't like this fight for Jalen Turner in the set. Look, if he wins, fantastic, fair play to him. I feel like Dan Hooker was the right level of step up. Getting Vicente Luque on your debut, I mean, fucking hell, like, that's rough enough. Like, I'll scratch that clean off, no problem. You lose to Vicente Luque in a round on your debut, upper weight class, no stress, short notice as well, fine. To me, the problem is Jalen Turner. I think this is just coming 1 or 2 fights too early. I think I agree with Spencer that he's coming to the point where experience is matching skills. I feel like, as we spoke about in the takeaways before, he's coming to a position where he's starting to feel out his length and he's starting to really hone in on that. I know when a guy's ready to be finished. I know when I can sniff that finish and I know I'm going to get it. Gamrot, though, is just a different type of fighter. He's very unorthodox in his grappling exchanges. He'll throw mad kicks to ankle picks. He can fight long. He can fight short. He can fight in the clinch. I'm just not sure that the sniper-like finishing, especially in the grappling department, will phase Gamrot. You know, we forget that Gamrot has been to the ADCC. He won European trials, which is an insane achievement. Okay, you go out and you fight Gary Tonin. These things fucking happen in grappling. But like, there's absolutely no slouch in losing to somebody like Gary Tonin in the way that he did. Fine, no problem. I don't know whether Jalen Turner is the level of Mateusz Gamrot, and we're about to fucking find out. But on the feet, they're both long. They can both fight long. And Mateusz has that really unorthodox entry to the grappling. My only fear for Gamrot, and something that I can foresee happening, obviously I haven't picked it, but I can foresee happening, is as Gamrot leans for that ankle pick, Turner has really long legs and really prominent knees. And I would be very, very wary if I'm Gamrot of, as I go for my high kick or I go for my overhand right and lean down for my ankle pick, that I'm not getting domed at the same time. But yeah, it'll be very interesting. Very.
Yeah. I think the first 2 minutes of this fight is where Gamrot is going to be looking for, you know, his reads, his entries, what's safe to do, a lot of feints. And that's the time that Jalen Turner is going to have to turn it on and go forward and not give him the time to do that. And I think that's going to be the most exciting spell. And it will probably tell the story of this fight. It's either Turner will move forward, maybe land something, or Gamrot will be able to figure it out and kind of time whatever Turner throws in for a takedown. Very, very exciting fight. I'm really looking forward to that. Though we have Bo Nickel opening up the main card against Jamie Pickett. I mean, I don't know, lamb to the slaughter, maybe. I think we've heard that word kind of being thrown around a bit, and this is the way I look at this fight. Look, it's been a while, Sean, since Bo Nicholas came on the scene, and, you know, he was supposed to fight Jamie Pickett at the start of the year on the first pay-per-view card of the year, got moved on to this card. You know, the dust has settled. You know, there was a lot of hype around Bo Nickel and his Dana White Contender Series fights. He fought very low competition in his Contender Series fight, and he's fighting pretty low competition here as well. What do you make of this whole Bo Nickel thing and this facade and the fact he's getting the main card slots and everything like that? I mean, personally, I haven't bought into it too much. I can see the star quality there, but even a win over Jamie Pickett here, and it's going to probably be a first-round submission as well. I mean, we're still going to probably be in the same position as we are now with Bo Nickel after this fight.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that. He's only 3 fights into his career. He should be getting a good few fights like this to move him on and see if he is a real fighter, you know. We all thought Aaron Pico would be great as well, and maybe he is now, but it took him getting fucking sparked about 4 times before we realized that. I watched about 30 seconds of Jamie Pickett against Kyle Dawkins, and I turned it off and I said, I won't bother wasting my time anymore because we know what's going to happen here.
You got 5 seconds longer than I did.
I saw a takedown. I was like, oh, this lad can defend it. Oh, wait, no, hold on. And yeah, Bo Nickel's just going to take him down and it's going to be a short night. But look, he looks a very good athlete. He's a great pedigree with his wrestling. He's 27 years of age, so very relatively young, fighting out. It's American Top Team Happy Valley. Is that an actual American Top Team, or what the fuck is that? I'm not sure. So that might be an issue. But if he's in a good gym, he's, you know, obviously a very good athlete. He's ginger, though that might be an issue. So I don't know. Yeah, why not? I just think it's very funny. Like, it's a win-win for me because if Bo Nickel goes out and he becomes like one of the best fighters in the world, becomes a champion, I actually like going to really enjoy it. I think it'll be really fun and really, really cool. And if he doesn't, I can laugh at Americans. So win-win.
Yeah, like the interesting thing for me here, and I'm curious to see what the UFC do, is like you did say that he's only 3 fights into his career, but we're talking about a guy who's the champion there right now after maybe 7 or 8 fights, or got that opportunity after 6 fights. How are you? What do you think of that? I see you.
I think it's a bit different, right? Like the grappling of Bo Nickel is a fantastic base for MMA, But if you can't strike, it doesn't fucking matter. And like in MMA especially, right? Because you're not going to sub guys. I mean, it's middleweight.
But like you're saying, if you can't grapple, like I don't think Alex Bahia can grapple all that well. He got to where he's at with a base one. Yeah, I know, but like that, it's well,
nearly got submitted by Michaelitis in the fight before.
Yeah, but you're kind of reading you're kind of reading what I was going to say wrong. I'm looking at him as how quickly are the UFC going to want to move him up the rankings. I wasn't trying to belittle the fact after 3 fights. We're talking about a champion who was less than 10 fights in the division. And UFC are going to look at a guy like this and want to move him up a little bit. So is it a Jamie Pickett? Are we looking at a ranked opponent next? I'm very curious because I can see him being very fast tracked up to the top of the division because they need someone like him. They need someone that's marketable. That's where I was going.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. Because if you think about it on paper, if Bo Nickel can put enough together that he can get to Alex Bahia's hips, he's probably going to take him down, right? And then is he going to do better than Izzy was able to do when there was that turtle exchange? Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. And then it's like, okay, well, what happens? But that to me shows that it shows the reason why this is Sean and Spencer's favorite division is you can have a guy who isn't super well rounded and has all of his. If we have 15 chips to put in different categories, Alex Bahia's got 14.9 chips in the striking and 0.1 in the grappling, right? Bo Nickel has got 14.5 probably in the grappling and 0.5 in a bit of striking or a bit of submissions, maybe. So like do
you know what's funny though, right? The level of how we rate fighters from Americans, right, is NCAA wrestlers, Bellator fighters underneath it, because Johnny Eblen is a great wrestler. He can strike very well. Yeah, if you suggest that he could win the UFC title, people are like, oh, what the fuck? Yeah, you just suggested there that he could beat Pereira, and like maybe he could, but like I think most people would probably agree with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be the same for Bo Nickel as it was for Alex Bahia. It's mission, keep him away from Robert Whittaker kind of a job and get him up there as quickly as he can. I don't think that he's going to move up the rankings as quickly as Alex Bahia. I don't know whether the UFC, I think if they have air of sniff of a chance of him getting up there and trying to match him to get him up there, they will. But it's all based off your performances. We have to see him in here. We have to see him in another fight maybe later on this year and kind of come to the assessment. We don't know what he's striking is like yet.
Darren Till retired just in time, didn't he? It would have been perfect. It would have been fucking perfect.
It would. We were. I can't remember who I was trying to feed Darren Till to. It was one fighter last weekend, Spencer. Didn't I suggest it to you?
Yeah, there was Brendan Allen. You were trying
Allen.
to set Darren Till in to fight Brendan Allen last week.
Yeah, the old honor, you kind of take your fighter down and get your win over a named opponent. Darren Till is a good one for that, but not anymore. Spencer, when we're talking about Bo Nickel here, how do you kind of foresee his career kind of panning out in this fight and then in general in the UFC as well?
I mean, in this fight, it's going to look great. His career is going to look amazing after this fight.
Yeah.
It's going to be 4-0.
4-0.
4-0 with 4 straight first round submission victories or 4 straight first round finishes because he's going to dominate Jamie Pickett to clean up Happy Valley for Sean ATT. Happy Valley. Happy Valley is in Pennsylvania. It's where Bo Nickel went to college at Penn State. So it seems like they have set up a satellite school close to home for Bo Nickel.
I hear those Penn State College. That's a very nice place, isn't it? Nothing bad ever happened there.
No, nothing bad ever happened there with their football team and its coaches.
Well, when you have to name something Happy Valley, that means there's some dodgy shit going on there, to be honest.
But to get back to your question, I mean, we've touched on it, right? It's going to be all about matches. It's going to be all about his growth and development. Like we talked just a minute ago about, Sean talked about like the level of talent that Jalen Turner has fought to this point going into this fight in comparison to Mateus Gamrot. Jalen Turner's 27, Bo Nickel's 27. So at least Jalen Turner has had those 18 fights to gain all of that experience. Bo Nickel thus far has beaten a weekend warrior on some fight card that Jorge Masvidal put on, and then 2 hand-picked punching bags on Contender Series. Now, he did what you're supposed to do in those fights when you're Bo Nickel or you're a pedigreed, credentialed prospect. But like at some point, and it's not this weekend, he's going to get in there with somebody that's like, look, I'm not going to panic when you take me down, and I'm going to get up. And before you get in to take me down, I'm going to punch you in the face or kick you in the leg or kick you in the stomach. And I'm going to make you I'm going to not let you dictate these terms of engagement. And then we're going to find out about him. Because we've seen lots of, like Shawnee mentioned the like way we go crazy about, oh my God, NCAA wrestler. And like, look, it is a very good accolade, right? To be a 3-time national champion, 4-time national finalist, 4-time All-American. Those are lovely accolades. They're accolades that a number of fighters in the UFC that wrestled previously in college don't have and would love to have. But we've also seen people that compete on the world stage not have success in the UFC. And those guys are better than Bo Nickel because Bo Nickel didn't make the Olympic team. So at some point, this dude is going to have to prove he's got more than just good wrestling.
Look at Daniel
I know
Cormier,
you're taking
like,
that shot, but I'm not going to acknowledge it because Daniel Cormier was a terrific wrestler.
Yeah, but a great wrestler. Went to the Olympics, lost twice to Jon Jones, lost twice to Sipa. But just one thing on Monica as well, and maybe to go against all the points we're making here. Sometimes there is something good about just driving a lad to the moon, just letting him off. Let's see how it goes. You know, if Darren Till was there, throw him in against Darren Till and give him a fucking title shot. Imagine having a champion at fucking 6-0 in the UFC. Like that'd be like the Pereira one was a little bit different because he had the backstory with Izzy. We know, you know, the Izzy matchup is always going to be a striker matchup, turned into a white belt jiu-jitsu tournament there for about 2 minutes in the middle of it and all that. But you know, what happens, right? Like, you do put him in there against, you know, Brendan Allen, right? And okay, Brendan Allen hits him, knocks him out. You can always say, fuck it, you know what? He's only 3 fights into his career, and then you can give him the slow rolling movement. Like with the Pico one I mentioned, they didn't try to fast roll him quickly, even, but he got a guy that wasn't that great and knocked him out, who was okay, like, but then they kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. Do it once. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then give him the slow roll. You know, and that's
tough fucking lessons. Tough lessons to
fucking throw him in there. Be grand.
Aaron Pico had to crawl so that Bo Nickel can run.
There 100%. You go. Bo Nickel versus
CT scan.
Bo Nickel. Robert Whittaker doesn't have an opponent, guys. Throw him in there with Robert next. That's
honestly, I would like to see him get fast tracked, like just to see, right?
I want to see him going against the ranked opponent too next. He's no messing around here.
He's talking about, I can't wait to this. Like, me and Hamzat is going to be a massive fight. Like, he's crazy. But like, there were a lot of people that said, hey, if he goes out there and fights Izzy today, he can beat Izzy. Cool. Let's see it. I want to see it.
The worst thing, you can get those another wrestler. That's when fucking Bo Nickel is going to be in trouble. Like, give him Izzy. Like, if Izzy loses to Pereira, give him Izzy. That's the perfect fucking fight. Let's make that happen.
Luckily for Bo Nickel, there is no other wrestlers in the middleweight division right now as it speaks. It's working out quite well for him. We'll talk about the next two guys. That is Trevin Jones, who's taking on Cody Garbrandt, former bantamweight title. Look, at these two guys couldn't get a win in a lucky bag if they tried lately, to be honest. I mean, you know, it's been a massive fall from grace for Cody Garbrandt. Only one win in his last 6. I mean, Spencer, if you want to call it a fall from grace for Cody Garbrandt, I think it's probably fair to call it that now at this stage. Try and put your finger on it.
I think that's an understatement.
Yeah.
Massive. Like the fall from grace was like,
you try to be nice. I try to overblow things and you call me out for overblowing, and then I try not to overblow things and you say I should. It's a fine balance with you guys. So it is. But talk to me about Cody.
More and more with each fight that this guy has, that Dominic Cruz performance just becomes such an outlier and such an anomaly that, like, we are going to look back on and just go, how the Christ did this happen? Because, like, truthfully, I can see him getting knocked out on Saturday. Because Trevin Jones can crack and he can take shots, and Cody Garbrandt knows one way, and that's to go out there, and as much as he tries to fight on the outside and be sort of smart and make good decisions, he gets hit once and he says, well, I got to throw back. And if you go in there and you start chucking bombs with Trevin Jones, he's going to try to find your chin. And if he finds your chin, you go night again. And like, then what are we doing? Like, there was a point that this dude seemed like he was going to be one of the pillars of the UFC, one of the cornerstones for a number of years coming off that Cruz performance. And it has just gone south in a hurry and hard to where he's fighting Trevin Jones. They tried to give him Ronnie Yaya. That was going to be the fight that he had, was Ronnie Yaya, who can't throw punches and still may have beaten him by taking him down. That's where Cody Garbrandt is at. That is insane to me because I remember that Dominic Cruz performance. But this is where we are, and he might get knocked out on Saturday.
100%. 100%. Do we talk about Dricus or we talk about Ian next? What do we want?
Can I just say one thing on Dricus? First of all, Trevin Jones, who's he? Never heard of him. Dricus du Plessis, like one of the most overrated fighters in the UFC because people think he's good. This lad is stone useless. I think Derek Brunson's going to knock him out. Like, I really do. And he's a big favorite coming into this. Dricus du Plessis is just a fucking windmill merchant. At middleweight, though, could be champion.
Yes, that's a fair point.
I'm just throwing it out here because I have to be responsible. Windmill merchant that knocked out Roberto Soldic that everybody on this show gets real up in their business about. So
what happened the next time?
I understand. I get it. But if we're going to do the like gas up Roberto Soldic all the time, we got to mention that this dude knocked him out.
But sure, you were talking there about Cody Garbrandt getting beat by a lad who can't punch. Sure, Jon Jones almost got beat by fucking OSP and he's only one hand.
Yeah, I know. It's unfair.
That's not got to do with the point you made. I'm making it anyway.
That's an unnecessary shot.
Jesus.
That's an unnecessary shot.
Poor
Roberto Soldic never did anything to anyone, and he's taking shots across the bow from Spencer here now as well. He's just getting that now because we have to watch fucking Larry on the couch there fighting on the fight night cards instead of Roberto Soldic because the UFC are too cheap to bring him in.
Fuck him. Charlotte bastards.
I agree with Dricus du Plessis, not quite to the extremities of your description of him, Sean. I don't think he's that great. I think he beat a very poor Darren Till in his last fight. I think he's fighting a similar enough kind of style of fighter in Derek Brunson here, and I don't think Brunson is all but done yet. But that could be a very exciting, messy fight, or just a really boring.
Brunson isn't as weak-minded or weak-bodied as Darren Till, I think, so he's probably given a bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, right. Let's talk about Ian Garry. Fucking hell, an hour and a half in and we're getting to Ian Garry. Sean, what are your assessment here? I mean, we talk about fights blown under the radar. Ian Garry's is somewhat blown under the radar coming in here on one of the biggest events that UFC have put on this year so far. Like, it's a colossal card to be on. He's on it with Jon Jones, labeled one of the greatest fighters of all time. I mean, there should be such more of a bigger deal made about this. And to be honest, I'm not going to lie, even myself at the start of this, I forgot to mention Ian Garry at the start. I mean, it's kind of epiphany of the way this fight is falling under the radar somewhat.
Yeah, I spent 4 days at Bellator Dublin the other day, meeting people involved in MMA fans, coaches, the whole lot for 4 days, and I don't think one person mentioned Ian Garry to me. Not one. Like, I heard James Gallagher, I heard even Dean Barry, I heard Reese McKee, I heard Will Fleury, I heard all of these different names, but no Ian Garry, and Ian Garry's fighting the next week. You know, it's a bizarre one, and I'm not sure why, honestly. I think, like, there's a few different things and a few reasons behind it. I think he hasn't been around in a while. He's in the kind of the UFC mid-card mix, which is probably the worst place in the fucking world to be in mixed martial arts these days, because you can just get absolutely lost. You know, he hasn't really been out there maybe doing interviews. He hasn't been, as kind of normal, I suppose, or as he once was on social media. It's a little bit different. It's all very, kind of put together now, which is great, but I don't think conducive for people to be massive fans. I think the whole clinging on to McGregor thing, as well as like massively played against him. I think people really kind of didn't like it, and it hasn't made people dislike him as such, I think, but has not made people love him like they maybe once did, which is a bit of an issue. Now, having said that, Ian Garry goes in there and he gets a knockout here, and all that hype will be there next Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. So we can forget about all that. And you know what? He's 10 fights into his career. Probably better off. Actually doesn't really matter at all because, as I said, it'll quickly change. On the fight itself, Song Kenan, watched a good bit of him there over the last couple of days. Do you know what? He's not actually that bad of a fighter. You know, he can hit hard. He's who's the fight? He knocked a chap out in about fucking 10 seconds at the start of one of his fights. Hits very, very hard. He's a good, straight up, tall, long fighter. I think Ian Garry just a little bit taller, little bit longer, a little bit straighter of a shooter, and a little bit better of an all-round fighter. I think Ian Garry needs to come in here and get a finish. I think he needs to come in, take him apart, win the fight, show that this is the level of guy he's kind of been fighting. I actually think it's a drop down in level from his last opponent, whose name escapes me right now. It's up from weeks and down, I think, a little bit from the last one. So
Gabe Green.
Yeah, I think he has to go in here tricky enough. I think Song is tricky enough. He's no easy out, but I think he has to go in there and get him up, because if we're looking at Ian Garry, like we talked earlier on about Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's 16-0, Ian Garry's 10-0. He needs to be rising those ranks going forward, and I'm not saying he needs to be ranked or in Rakhmonov's level in the next 5 or 6 fights, but he does need to be climbing that ranks, and I think a win over Song Kenan, good interview afterwards and saying, this is my year, I'm going to have 2 or 3 more fights this year, going to climb those ranks. That's what he needs here, I think, and I think he'll get it.
Yep, 100%. I think that he needs to go out there and chase for the knockout as well, but not, like you said, not chase too hard or it might end wrong. Spencer, when you're looking at Ian Garry from a non-Irish bias, from a non-Irish perspective, what are you hoping to see from him as a guy who has been kind of labelled as a prospect coming up in the welterweight division?
Those exact same things. He needs to come out and make a statement here. Like, I understand and said this on one question and 10 things. I understand the way last year went. Go out, log 30 minutes, get 2 good wins, work on some of the stuff you've been working on in the gym, get more reps, all of that stuff. I understand it. But those 2 fights and some other stuff are the reason why even you guys didn't remember that he's on this card, that there's not that hype, that there's not any of that buzz that followed him into Madison Square Garden for his debut and after that fight. If he wants to get back into that mix, if he wants to show again that he is one of the top prospects in this sport and in this promotion, he's got to go out and run through Song Kenan. Because like, there were other people calling him out, and he can say all the things that he wants about, look, I wanted that Bam Bam fight and I was down for that, but this is what the UFC told me. Okay, but you took this one, so go smash this one and then take a bigger one. Because at some point, like all prospects, you got to take a step forward so that we know what you are and where you're at. Because he's going to beat this dude on Saturday. I don't know if he's going to finish him or not. I hope he does. He should. That's the performance that he needs. But at some point, you got to get in there and get tested. And I hope later this year he gets a real test.
Yep, 100%. I think a win here, and we'll be looking at some kind of a test, something like an old veteran test, I think, is what Ian needs. Anything to add on to that as regards to Ian Garry, Harry?
I mean, all I'll say is I'll slightly give the devil's advocate side of what you guys have said. Like, I have no problem with Ian flying under the radar a little. It felt like in Cage Warriors, he came out, he had an abundance of confidence, maybe too much confidence, and sometimes threw himself into situations that he then had to recover from. There were then situations where he just ran across the cage and decimated fellas. One of the most complete performances we saw from him was the Jack Grant fight. I just thought he was fantastic. All the grappling exchanges, he looked so good in that fight. And then again against Gabe Green, he came out and he showed us a bit of the offensive wrestling. He toyed with that. He played with that. I don't have a problem in any way, shape, or form with Ian going out and having tested the skills that he is learning in the gym against guys that are at a similar level to him. As Shawnee says, he's 10-0 in his career. I don't think he's coming in anywhere near as complete as Shavkat Rakhmonov would have come in at 10 fights in his career, right? So I'm happy to have him build his skill set, test his skill set at this sort of level. I do think at some point this year, I agree with everything you've just said. We need a little bit of a pickup. If it's next fight, fine. If it's the fight after that, I'd probably be more happy with that. End the year with a bang, go out, maybe take the Bam Bam fight, right? I think that's another good test, but it's not rocket ship type stuff. I like how Ian Garry has had a lot of tumultuous things happen in his life from that Cage Warriors performance to now. It seems like things are settling. He's becoming a family man. He's got married, all this stuff. I don't mind the taking it slow, especially when he's the age that he is.
And it's not necessarily for me taking it slow. I think maybe me and Sean might have a different kind of connection to it with, you know, we always do get like support our own and big up Irish fighters too, but it just feels a little bit different right now for Ian Garry. I think definitely for me anyway. I don't want to speak for Sean too much on that, but we're going to talk about very, very quickly, two more undefeated fighters, and then we're going to take off it here in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Harry, your guy Farid Basharat is an undefeated bantamweight. Javid's brother is coming in to take on Damon Blackshear. He's a very exciting prospect and one that we should be looking out for, like his brother, shouldn't we?
Absolutely. They fight very similarly, very patient, very upright, good boxing, good wrestling, good submissions, well-rounded fighters. The three of them, Amir and Javid and Farid, sort of make up those three musketeers. They've come from London Shoot Fighters. They've come over to the States and relocated their training to here. I am just as excited about Farid as I am about Javid. Yeah, really, really, really interested.
Indeed. Cameron Simon is a guy that you had on as a SevereMMA YouTube channel. You spoke with him, gave a great interview. Check that out if you haven't, Spencer. Coming in here with a lot of potential as a young man.
Yeah, definitely. He's somebody, and I said it on 10 Things this week. Shawnee staked his claim to Jamal Hill very early. I'm staking my claim to Cameron Simon. Now, I'm not going to say right now, at 22 years old and 7 fights into his career, that he's going to be UFC champion at some point. But he's going to be a top 10 talent if he continues along the way he is. The poise that this kid has at 22 and the focus that he has and the mindset that he has is really impressive to me. He had every opportunity to get down on himself, question himself, and sort of struggle in that debut because he lost a point, because he had a short notice replacement fighter that was probably a little tougher than he expected. And through it all, he just stayed level. Went into his corner between the second and third and said, yeah, all right, I'll just come out and finish this dude. And went out and finished that dude. Mana Martinez is going to be a guy that will come forward and give him a chance to engage. I think we see the fight that Cameron talked about when we spoke on this platform last week and aired earlier this week, that he goes out there and he gets a chance to throw a little bit, that he gets a chance to do a little more early. And I do think he gets him out of there early and really cements himself as another one of these young rising stars in the bantamweight division.
Pressed the wrong button there. Sorry, gentlemen. My co-host Sean, he was going to step in there and save the day. Look at the rest of the fights on the card. We won't go into in great detail. Viviane Araújo versus Amanda Ribas in the 125-pound division. Interesting fight there. Chance for Ribas maybe to get into the rankings with a win. I think this is a difficult enough challenge for her. Jessica Penne against Tabitha Ritchie. 115-pound division. Interesting fight too. Luck Rajabov, former PFL finalist in 2019, coming in to make his UFC debut against Esteban Ribovic from Argentina. 11-0 prospect coming in here. That's an interesting fight as well. I know I've watched Razabov a couple of times. He's a decent enough guy. I know you've seen him a little bit as well, Sean.
Very good fighter. Esteban, 11-0, all 11 finishes, but Razabov, I watch him, as you have, Ian, for the last 2 or 3 years. He's a win over Chris Wade, a win over Ahmad Aliyev, win over Alex Martinez, beat Zach Sain last time out, has a draw with Islam Mamedov, who's a very good fighter over in Bellator at the moment. Very, very good fighter for the UFC to have picked up, 32 years of age now. So, like, I think he's the type of guy who'll beat a lot of those guys if he's put up in the lower ranks in the UFC and climb very quickly. So, looking forward to seeing him.
100%, and I'm looking forward to the main event. That's what it's all about. Jon Jones versus Cyril Gane. All the questions will be answered. Check out Sean and Graham on the big podcast who will break down all the news, and then go over to the Severe Takeaways on Tuesday where Spencer and Harry will further break down the card in more detail as well. I'm looking forward to it. Sean, Harry, Spencer's looking forward to it. You should look forward to it as well. Check us out on SevereMMA YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Head on over to the Severe SevereMMA Patreon and sign up there for a lot of great content. There you have it up over Shawnee's head. Hit that barcode, sign up to the Patreon. It's the start of the month. It's the perfect time to do it. Get on over there. Check out the Owl Triangle for myself. Follow Sean, Harry, and Spencer on Twitter at Sean Sheen BA, at BJJ_Harry Powell, at Spencer Kai, and myself at O'Neal MMA. Enjoy the fight Saturday night. We'll be back next week for some more UFC preview.